Ooh, what up, though? It is not a Tuesday. It's a Monday. That's right. Monday night knockouts and 3 counts. We got a special one coming with you with our guy, James Lynch. But before I get to that, you know the drill. I got to tell you about our sponsors who help bring this show to you. And that would be the homies over at Potter's Tree Service. As you can see, if you're in the need for tree trimming, cutting your grass, cutting a tree down, storm damage cleanup, which I know a lot of you guys have had if you're in the Michigan area the last couple of days, hit up our homies over at Potter's Tree Service. As you can see in this drop down, those are all the things they offer. And now they offer lawn care as well. So if you need somebody to do it and you don't want to call Hacksaw Jim Duggan, hit up the homies over at Potter's Tree Service and enjoy the show. All right.
This is the Ring of Honor, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy.
This is Mr. Anderson.
This is good old JR Jim Rock, and you are listening.
You're listening to Knockouts and 3 Counts.
Cover! We got a new world champion!
That might be one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Knockouts and 3 Counts is the podcast, baby! It's the real deal, baby!
Knockouts and 3 Counts starts now.
What up, though? This is the Monday night edition of Knockouts and 3 Counts. I'm going to be breaking some stuff tomorrow over at Pine Knob, but we got a good one for you today with our buddy James Lynch. James, thanks for coming back through, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. I always love doing your show. Love that intro. And I might even, if I lived closer, I'd be taking advantage of that tree service, to be honest. I could use, we got a lot of trees out here in Vancouver, so.
Hey, shout out to Potter's Tree Service.
Yeah.
I'm sure Asa will be popping in somewhere soon, adding lawn care to the game too, but we appreciate him for checking out and supporting the show as well. But yeah, dude, we were talking a little bit about it before we went live. I mean, everything's been seeming to be business is booming for James Lynch right now, but what's new since the last time you dropped on the show?
A few things. Yeah, Fight Bananas, I linked up with them. I've known Dave Van Auken for a number of years. We've always wanted to do something together, and the timing just worked out this time around. So I'm going to be doing about 2 interviews a week for them right now, which is great. Always interviewing everyone, right? So nice to just have another outlet to host those interviews. And then I guess something else we sort of chatted about briefly was me doing commentary on Fight Pass. Unified, I already do interviews for the promotion already, but when they did the 2 shows on one day, they had to put their main commentary team in Toronto for that show. So I got the call to do Edmonton, and it was awesome, guys. Like, I've done commentary before. I've done like maybe 5 or 6 events. I did one for a promotion called Rise FC, which is out here in Vancouver. But to get to do this on Fight Pass, to get to do like the whole, like, I got to fly out and stay in the hotel and come back the next day, and it was just a great card too. Like, there was 2 really big upsets on the card and a couple comeback fights. That was like another level, and obviously they have a great team behind them, the social team. Shout out to my guy over at Deer Combat doing all the stuff behind the scenes, Mike, who's doing some great job on the social media stuff. It was so much fun. So yeah, never a dull moment in my life, guys. It's a good time these days.
I'm not mad at you.
Yeah. Sounds like it. I know. Speaking on the commentary gig, me and Kyle have both done commentary now. It's such a fun thing to be able to sit cage side, and like you said, when you have them experiences where we haven't been flown out quite yet, but we did get the whole hotel experience and stuff like that. It is kind of a different ball game when you got to travel for it. It adds another layer to it, man. But it's such a crazy feeling being cage side, just seeing all the emotions that go into the fight and stuff like that from each guy from the corners, and just being able to add what you can to the fight. It's just such an interesting feeling, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's cool to be part of their story too, like to a certain degree. Like, that's a call that will live forever on Fight Pass. Like, that's so cool, So, and by the way, like, I never got into this to do commentary. I've been very fortunate. I've had a few opportunities where I've had people reach out, like, right place, right time, but I absolutely love it. Like, I'm totally down. If anyone's hiring, I would love to be on your mic these
100%.
days.
I hear that. Me too.
and it's just, but it's just so rewarding, and it is, and also I got to say this as well, just quickly. I had a really good commentary team. Mitch Clark, former UFC fighter, has a win over Ally Aquinta. People forget that was a big upset back in the day. Canadian guy, based out of Alberta. I've known Mitch for years. He is one of the best commentators I've ever heard. He knows every technical detail. Like, I'm the energy, describe what I'm seeing guy. Mitch is the real technical guy. So to just hear him break things down bit by bit in the fight was so valuable for me. And then we had KB Bowler wrestler as well, former UFC middleweight, also based out of Alberta. It was his first time doing commentary, but he sounded like a vet on the mic, just being able to describe everything from a technical standpoint. It was just a really good flow, and two guys that I've respected for a long time. Getting to do the show with them was such an honor.
Yeah, I went back and watched it, man. You guys killed it. And like Corey said, I'm in the same boat as you. Like, I wanted broadcasting was something I always wanted to do, but I never really thought that commentary was going to end up being that. And at this point, hell, I've done commentary. I'm going to judge some fights this week. I fought myself. I mean, you can pretty much like circle the whole gamut, but I'm with you. It's a whole different thing. And especially being that our show does wrestling as well, I've gotten to do some of that as well. It's crazy how two things that are technically called the same thing are like so different. Because like you said, doing it on the MMA side of things, I feel like my job is to kind of like point out why certain things are working the way they are. And like you said, calling the action. In wrestling, it's just so different because you're trying to, add your little flavor to it and explain it for the people that are watching on TV and all that stuff. So definitely a different thing. It'll be interesting to see how Joe Tessitore does with that now that he's going over to WWE.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've seen a lot of like sort of buttoned up regular, broadcaster guys go do the wrestling thing. And sometimes it's worked out, sometimes it hasn't. But, I think it's cool that we're seeing all these different voices. Like if you think of back in like the 80s and 90s, that wasn't really a common thing. Now they're more open to doing different stuff when it comes to commentary and different things. And, like I always tell you guys in the show, like I'm a casual wrestling fan these days. You give me anything from the 80s and 90s, I will watch it. I'm like obsessed with all the documentary stuff. But I did pick up on that because Sean Ross Sapp, I used to work with him, one of my good friends. He gives me all my wrestling news. So I did know that about Joe taking the role with WWE.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be like reliving all those fight night games I played over the years. But with that being said, we've got a lot of fights to talk about. So before we get to what we got this week, you got to tell me, where was your head at with this whole Jake Paul versus Mike Perry thing? How are you feeling with how it played out?
So I thought Paul would win because of the size difference, but I thought the odds were a bit off. And I was kind of like, Mike Perry's actually active. Like he's been quite successful in BKFC. This isn't like someone who's like retired and out of their element. I just got a cough here quickly. 1 second, a little under the weather. Oh, can't hear it though. The beauty of a cough button here on my mixer. I did not expect Jake to dominate like that. I figured he'd win. I actually thought the fight might have gone the distance because if you look at, I think Mike Perry's last knockout loss, it was Jeff Neal back in like 2019, and Jeff's actually a pretty good fighter. Here comes Jake, just from bell to bell, dominated the fight, looked great. Not much to say other than that. Mike Perry got absolutely dominated.
Just a thorough lack of defense from Perry's end. I mean, that was really the story of the fight in my eyes, was just the lack of defense on Perry's end. We've seen it play out in his favor quite a few times, especially in the bare knuckle realm, where he's kind of lured people in to throw some good punches, make them miss 1 or 2 shots, and just have that heat behind him. With Jake being the bigger guy, he wasn't able to implement that type of game plan. He was essentially just eating punches every time he would try to counter. It wasn't within range. He landed a couple good shots. I think it was like the 4th round or something. He started to get momentum back his way. But other than that, man, like you say, it was really just a really dominant performance. And I expected a little more out of Perry, to be frank.
So did I.
I definitely did too. I was hoping we'd see more, especially with like your point, Corey, the fact that Perry's always able to take a lot of damage. I really hoped that would be something that would be a thing in this fight, but I think the size ended up being too much for him. I mean, I guess the question out of this though is, do you think this hurts Mike Perry at all as far as BKFC goes? And do you think it'll hurt him when this contract is up or whenever he fights the rest of these fights, if he potentially wanted to try to go fight somewhere else? Because I've also heard rumors about him talking to the UFC and stuff too.
It has to. I know it's a different sport, and I know Paul was a lot bigger, but the optics of it didn't look good. He got completely dominated, and this whole narrative after Perry leaving the UFC was that he's improved. Because a lot of people, let's be honest, we all know this. When Perry left the UFC, we didn't think much was going to happen. In fact, Perry was kind of on that track of like, is he going to be okay? Remember, he got in a lot of trouble outside with the law and everything, and there was sort of this concern of like, is he going to go down this dark path that we've seen so many fighters go down? and it became a success story. He was like Mr. BKFC, and he created all this good, goodwill, and he became like, again, he was sort of the face of the promotion. Now, again, I know it's different, that it's not bare knuckle is different than boxing, but it has to hurt him a bit in the interim. And then how about, we got to mention this, Conor McGregor tweeted.
I was going to ask you
where did that
about
come
that.
from? So, I mean, that again, Conor has a lot of influence. Like, this is one of the things that I think David Feldman had to consider when Conor McGregor came aboard, is that Conor's a bit erratic. So it's not good for business when you have one of your owners trashing one of your big superstars. Like, I can't see that being good for business. So I think all those things definitely has hurt Mike Perry. Will it hurt him long term? I don't know. I think eventually people will forget about this. In terms of, like it was not a good performance. I mean, we've seen fighters all the time have bad nights at the office, and you forget about it as years go on and they build up more good faith. But I think right now we're recording this, and Mike Perry's stock is certainly taking a big hit.
Oh, especially when you look at where his momentum was, right? Like, his momentum was in the sky. He was that guy, like you had mentioned. He was undefeated since making the move, since exiting the UFC, both in boxing and bare knuckle. And he really, to your point, had became family man Perry, and was all about doing the right things, and kind of talked this really good game, and was looking to be this next, big guy, to your point, for BKFC, and potentially if he made the move to somewhere else or something like that. But yeah, you lose a fight like that the way you did to Jake, being with all the publicity and everything that goes into all of his fights. Yeah, man, that's got to take at least a good chop out of the knee on the momentum train, at least. To your point, can you get it back in his direction and stuff like that? For sure. But I feel like at this very moment, for sure, it definitely took a chunk out of it.
I think social media wise and stuff like that, it's definitely going to be, there you go. What's up with Perry? I missed something. He fought Jake Paul on Saturday, man. So my whole thing is, I definitely think it's going to hurt him more so in the interim, because I feel like social media and a lot of the casual fans, they're just going to, oh shit, he got knocked out. They're not going to look and say, like any of the three of us would, okay, well, he fought a guy that's way bigger. Okay, well, Mike Perry's not really a boxer. At the end of the day, all those people are going to see is that he got knocked out. I think once he goes to BKFC again, I think all will be forgiven, because as far as bare knuckle goes, so far there hasn't been anybody even able to touch him over there. Now we'll have to see if that messes with his confidence at all and where that goes. But I can't lie, though, I definitely was a little shocked when I saw the tweets from Conor, because I'm like, yo, like, you're like dogging out arguably your biggest star in the company that you just became part owner, and that just seemed a little bit wild to me. But I mean, I think it's going to hurt him in the interim, but I think, like you said, I think with where Perry's at as a whole, I think that in the long run, I mean, he's still going to be the star as far as BKFC goes. Now, I don't know that if I believe that he's really got a chance of going back to the UFC. I think this might have hurt. Yeah. Because I think
even before this, I don't think I know he draws people, and BKFC, I see the numbers, they do quite well, and I think there is some intrigue there, but like, you'd have to strategically put him against guys at 170, I think, because we know that Perry's got a lot of deficiencies. I mean, towards the tail end of his UFC career, like, he wasn't even losing to really good guys. I think wasn't Tim Means one of his last fights? Like, nothing against Tim, but we're talking about a fighter that's in his 40s now. Like, I just think that this is one of those things where and just to add something else that I wanted to bring up is that I think a lot of people thought, I think what's so disappointing is not even the fact that he got dominated, is that like MMA fans felt like this was one fight where Jake would finally get exposed a little bit, and it went the opposite way, right? Like, always the excuse was, well, it's retired guys or guys that are older. Like, Perry's active, right? So it kind of is a bad look on MMA as a whole. You saw Bisping go after Jake Paul. Like, I think his reaction to that too is like, I think he expected more to Mike Perry. So I think that's another thing that's just adding another layer to this. It's not like Mike Perry's been retired and he's coming to retirement to fight Jake Paul. He's an active fighter, so for him to lose like that looks even worse. I know there is obviously the size difference and all that, and that played a factor in the fight, but it's the fact that Perry's supposed to be this guy who's rebuilt himself, and it didn't look like that on Saturday.
No, it genuinely looked like he got outskilled in there. It looked like his technique was not up to par, and especially like I had mentioned before, that lack of defense really just stood out so much in that fight. I mean, the commentary team was even really talking about it a ton. But even as just a casual boxing fan, like I really admire MMA, but I'll tune into the bigger boxing fights and stuff like that. But that's arguably the biggest aspect. That may be even more important than throwing great punches or footwork or anything in boxing, is having good defense. And to see the just utter lack of it from Perry in that fight was just, I mean, it was hard to watch on that.
I don't think he respected Jake Paul's punching power, to be honest with you. I think him coming over from bare knuckle, and from watching that fight, I just get the sense that he thought, because he's become so accustomed to just throwing, bare knuckle, I feel like he thought, if I can take a punch at bare knuckle, which he's proven he can, there's nothing Jake Paul can throw with boxing gloves on that's going to hurt me. And I think he found out in a hurry. And it's one thing that anybody who's been watching us for a while, if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But I've been saying for a while, the one thing you can't take away from Jake Paul, he may not be the best boxer, but the guy clearly can hit hard. Like, to what degree that is, I don't know, because I've never been hit by the guy. But all I know is in about every fight we've seen him in, he's landed at least a few good punches. And what he landed on Mike Perry, and to your point, being an active champion, I mean, that one you can't really say anything about other than the size, which we've already gone over, and I agree with that to a degree. But I think for skill wise, I think Jake proved that he was a level above Mike Perry. But speaking about Jake Paul, dude, what do you think about this thing with him and Tyson? Do you think it's going to happen?
I hope not. I will be an advocate for this. I don't know anyone who wants to see this fight. Like, what's the point? We just saw him beat Mike Perry. Like, the whole thing with Jake Paul now is like everyone just wants to see him tested, and that hasn't happened. We've seen this over and over again, where he keeps beating these fighters. Okay, we get it. You're a good boxer. He is. Like, you got to give him his credit. Like, he's not the best boxer, but he's a good boxer where he can get the wins he needs to get. We want to see, like, I think more people would be intrigued to see him fight like a legit boxer instead of these names. Like, what are we doing here? Like, Mike Tyson's, he's a legend. Like he should, and it's not even like Tyson's also one of these guys that like hasn't just faded into oblivion. Like, he's got businesses, he's got money. Like, I don't get any of this at all. I think it's a complete disgrace, if I can be honest. I do not want to see this fight. I have no interest in it. I have a lot of respect for Mike Tyson, what he's done, but if you need to make money, do it in other ways, not this. This is just like, it's cheap. That's what it looks like. It's a cheap way to make Jake Paul look better, and I don't like that.
I love the fact, sorry to Kyle to hop in on this one, but I love the fact of somebody of your level in the MMA media and just fight media in general being that vocal about it. I've said it here on the show as well that I don't want to see it, but to see somebody that with some level of backing actually feel the same way, it's good to see for sure, Kyle.
I appreciate that. D level celebrity, but I'll take it. But no, it's I just like, I honestly, like, even some of my close friends who are in the industry, a lot of us are like we're not going to watch this. Like, it's on Netflix. I have a Netflix subscription. I'm still going to probably skip it and just watch. Like, I don't want to see Mike Tyson get hurt.
My thing is, I don't like the part of this that bothers me. If Mike wants to do it, fuck it, let him fight. But my problem is more with the fact that they went to such lengths so that it would actually show up as a legitimate fight. Yeah. So then if Jake Paul wins, now he's going to go around and say, oh, I beat Mike Tyson, even though you beat Mike Tyson at fucking 60.
Yeah.
And so that's where my issue with it lies. Like, to be honest with you, especially after watching the one with him and Roy Jones Jr., like, I don't think I really would be bothered by it if it were just like an exhibition fight and like Mike just said, fuck it, I want to get in the ring and, I want to fight again. Not even if for nothing else, just because he wanted to get in the ring. See, I'd have no problem with that. My issue came when they made that to be like a real fight. Now, I understand that goes with like the whole shtick of what Jake Paul's doing, but I can't lie to you, man, especially being that I came from boxing before I ever, did jiu-jitsu or MMA. Like, it pains me to see this because I keep looking at this every way you can, and skill wise in the videos we see, I bet you Mike Tyson's going to look good for a round or two. But what scares me is exactly what I just said with Jake Paul, and that's what I've said multiple times on the show. Mike Tyson is damn near 60 years old, and Jake Paul can actually hit hard. And I'm just scared that if he gets hit, that we might see a damn catastrophe. And that's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm not trying to take nothing away from Mike Tyson, but I'm in the same boat as you. I probably am still going to watch it because I want to see what happens with it. But as far as wanting to see it, I mean, I could have done without this fight. But We got to talk about UFC 304, but before we do that, I got to give a shout out to our other sponsor, Mitten Muay Thai, who I'll be back on the mic for them August 9th, Masonic Temple, Detroit, Michigan. Make sure you come and check them out. As you can see from this video, they got down at the last one, which I got to be on commentary for. I'm looking forward to August 9th. Make sure you're there if you're able to. All right. Now, UFC 304, man. As a longtime fan and everything, I'm happy that this fight is finally going to happen with Belal getting a title shot. I want to start off rip by saying I'm just glad that we're finally at a point where Belal's getting his shot. But man, I just don't like, especially after how the last fight went, even though it ended with the eye poke. I don't know in my head, like I usually like you when you're watching a fight, I can almost like kind of envision how I think a fight's going to like play out. But this one, I really only see one of two ways this could go. Either Belal does like Belal's done in a lot of fights and he's able to get Leon to the ground or somehow get on top of him and be able to hold the fight where he wants it to go. Or I feel like it could be like a more point fight situation, but how are you feeling about Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad on this one, James?
I'm on a lone island here. I think Belal Muhammad wins.
I think he can too.
Now, let me explain why. A lot of people reference that first fight, and I agree with you. If you were just to take that first fight and we were going to go straight to the rematch, I'd feel like a lot of people and think that Leon Edwards can win. But the guys, that fight was in 2021. It was a short notice fight for Belal. I know Belal. There's a lot of things working against Belal in this fight. Let's talk about that quickly. Belal's older than Leon. He's 36 now. He's had a long layoff. Remember how long it took him to get this title shot. He's going to the UK. The crowd's going to be pro-UK. I know Belal claims that there'll be a lot of Muslims there and cheering him on, but it's not going to outweigh the overall UK crowd. I even had John Gooden on my show last week. He said the same thing. He's like, they're obviously going to cheer more for Leon. So that could weigh with the judges because I don't think there's going to be a finish in this fight. I think with both of their styles, you look at Belal, it's been finished one time in his career. It was actually the Conor McGregor Eddie Alvarez card. Vicente Luque knocked him out in that fight. They rematched. Belal beats him a couple of years later, right? And Leon, for the most part, other than that finish against Kamaru Usman, he really doesn't finish a lot of his opponents. And that could be a variety of reasons. He's fighting really high-level guys. He's, there's a lot of reasons why that could happen. Now, I know it's a 5-round fight that would lead to probably more of a chance being a finish, but I just think that, Belal seems to be improving fight to fight. Let's not forget that we're a couple fights removed where he finished Sean Brady, which was a very good win. Looking back now, what Brady has done, look good in that one. Gilbert Burns, I thought Belal could have finished Gilbert Burns, honestly, because you remember Burns was injured in that fight. That's one where I think he got a lot of flack from people, and I think that's fair criticism. If a fighter's injured, how do you not go for the kill when he's not 100%? You could clearly see that Burns was out. But kind of looking at Leon's run lately, I this might be a bit of nitpicking on my end, but the Colby fight, Colby obviously didn't fight. That was just such a weird performance. I don't fault Leon totally for that, but I also think, how could you not take advantage with that when Colby's bringing no offense? Like, there was not a point in that fight where I thought Colby was close to getting finished, or I felt like there should have been more killer instinct there with Leon. And then you go back to the Usman fights. The third fight they have, which Leon won by majority decision, was close. Obviously, I don't think anyone felt like Usman won, but it was still like the rounds were close. It wasn't like a blowout or anything. And I think there's a school of thought that Usman, not the same Usman that we've seen from years ago. The knees are going a bit. He's not the same, guy that we saw dominate Tyron Woodley to win the title a few years ago. I think that Usman's a little bit, gone at this point due to age and injuries and stuff. And then you go back to the first fight where Leon knocked him out. Usman was winning that fight. So I guess what I'm getting at here is, like, as impressive as Leon's been with these wins, I think there's some stuff that we could kind of dig in a little bit deeper and look. And I think if you look at Belal's wins, he gets a lot of flack for not finishing his opponents, but he's also been a little bit more dominant against those guys. So I think the fight's going to go the distance. That's the bet, I think. Like anyone, I'm telling you out there, I think if you're going to bet this fight, bet the fight goes the distance, because the judges could sway this in Leon's favor if he deserves it or not. But I'm going to go Belal the other way. I think Belal's going to do enough where he's going to try and get the takedowns. He's going to grapple. He's going to show a bit of striking. I think the striking's improved. This is a guy who trains with Habib. I think he slightly edges this one out, and it's going to be close. But I also wouldn't be shocked if it went the other way. I know that's not like a concrete answer, but my official pick is Belal. But it's going to be close. That's what I'm getting at.
I've just been really surprised. Surprised isn't the right word, but I guess more impressed with how well Belal's dealt with all the stylistic challenges that he's had to deal with in the division. Where I feel like for Leon Edwards, especially due to his championship level of inactivity, I guess we'll call it, where he's basically fighting once a year at this point. And I mean, he's taken on, to your point, 2 rematches essentially after getting that head kick knockout, and then a their version of Colby Covington that just did not apply pressure. And somehow that fight was still close. That wasn't even like a decisive victory for him with the way that fight played out. So that being said, man, I've been really impressed with Bilal, the way that he's dealt with the likes of like Wonder Boy, to your point, the rematch victory over Vicente Luque, the Gilbert Burns fight. He's just done a really good job of taking over a lot of these guys that you thought may give him some type of stylistic challenge in one way or another. And even though Leon Edwards is extremely well-rounded, and I think that's what makes him a really good champ, I do agree with you in the fact of, like, he's just been checking off all these things that add to the, like, oh, maybe this is an issue for Bilal, maybe this is, and he's found a way to not only work around it, but look overall successful in all those fights, whether it is a grounded game plan or not, and whether maybe the fans don't love it or not. But he's definitely finding his methods to victory, and what the easiest fight for him in the situation would be.
And you can't fault somebody for that.
No,
I agree with both of you guys. Like I've said for a long while that I feel like Bilal has been passed over way too much. Like, I mean, at this point, he's pretty much done everything you really can to cement yourself a title shot at this point. So, number one, I'm glad that this fight's happening. I also feel like it's kind of ironic that it's Leon being the one that he gets the title shot with after Leon having to come up the way he did. And then Leon said that he felt like Bilal hadn't done enough to earn it at first.
Yeah.
So I feel like the irony in that is kind of cool. But to your guys' point, I think Bilal's going to win mainly for the fact that doesn't matter the style. He's always seems to find a way. Now that could translate into a boring fight, but I feel like both guys are going to come out with something to prove, and I'd like to think that Leon Edwards is going to come out hot with the fact that it's in England as well. So I'm going to go with Bilal, but I feel like I'm hoping that England crowd is going to make this fight a little bit more rowdy in there. But speaking of the other fights they got on there, one that I really wanted to ask you about and kind of get your thoughts on as far as what to get to before we get to Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blades. What do you think about this Bobby Green Paddy Pimblett fight? Because I think there's a good chance that Bobby Green could beat Paddy Pimblett. And man, if Paddy Pimblett manages to lose in England like that, especially after the fight that everybody said they thought he had lost, that would be a really bad look. How do you think about this fight?
I think Bobby Green wins. He's actually the betting favorite. I don't know if you guys know that. And you know, so this fight's interesting too because it's the last fight on Paddy Pimblett's contract. He's every indication is he wants to come back to the UFC, but he also mentioned YouTube boxing, which is interesting because Paddy's a grappler. He's not. He does have knockout wins, but he's more of a grappler than a stand-up guy. But hey, to each his own. This is a tough fight. Like, I'm actually kind of surprised they put this fight together. Like, there's a lot of people that look at Bobby Green's age and then they look at the fact that, you know, he's been finished a couple times, like Jalen Turner. But I mean, we're talking about like legit ranked guys that he's fighting. And you look at the last fight with Jim Miller, like he dominated that fight. I know Miller's like, you know, he's at the end of his career, but that was a good performance. I was at that fight. That was UFC 300. That was a really good fight. Like it was, I thought it played well to what Green is trying to do. And, you know, we've even seen Green upset guys like Grant Dawson. I think my thing is Paddy Pimblett gets hit too much. I mean, this was an issue in his, it was his issue in his UFC debut against Vendramini. Remember Vendramini cracked him and you're like, whoa, hold on a second here. And then it happened in the, in one of his other fights as well. I got to refresh my memory here. But like, the thing where he's gotten away with it is that he hasn't fought guys with knockout power, really, if you look at it. Like, Vendramini was released from the UFC after that. Rodrigo Vargas, same thing. I think there was a couple hits in that one. That was another fight that he had. And then, you know, Jared Gordon, Tony Ferguson, they're older guys that don't really pack that punch. Bobby Green's one of those guys where you look at his age and you look at who he's fought, and every now and then he'll have like the Grant Dawson performance where it's like, where did this come from, right? So I think Bobby Green's going to knock out Paddy Pimblett. I think that Green is going to take full advantage of this opportunity. I think he's been fighting sort of a killer's row in that lightweight division. I don't think Paddy poses a knockout threat. I've heard some people be like, oh yeah, Paddy's going to sleep him. It's like, what? Like Paddy is, again, like he's not really he's a submission guy. And then I heard people say, oh yeah, he'll submit Bobby Green. Do you know the last time Bobby Green was submitted in a fight was like 2012? It was like before he was even in the UFC. Like he's got a good ground game. So I think this is a very interesting fight. Now, again, the only worry I have in this fight is kind of like the main event where if Bobby can't finish him and it goes to the scorecards, we've already seen this with the Jared Gordon fight, where even if you think the guy wins, the judges go the other way. That's an area of concern. So what I told my audience today is the same thing I'll tell you guys. If you're going to bet this fight, Bobby Green by knockout prop and hedge that with the Paddy Pimblett by decision prop. Paddy's not finishing Bobby Green. I would be very surprised if that happened. I think if Paddy wins, it's a decision. I think if Green wins, it's probably going to be a knockout. So that's the way I would go, but I'm going to officially go Bobby Green, second round knockout, and everyone's going to have their jaw on the floor. It's going to be great.
You heard.
I know Paddy was dealing with a bit of an injury and stuff in between this layoff and stuff, but a lot of it was just like negative fanfare and stuff like that. And it seemed like he wasn't necessarily wanting to immediately jump back in there and stuff. And I'm very curious to see if he's rounded out any elements of his skills in this time off, if he's really used this time to grind in the gym, whether he was the pictures of Fat Paddy that we were seeing in between fights every time, whether he was just staying in that mode or whether he was actually training, really improving his skills. And like we hear about from a lot of fighters, you learn and really improve the most when you're not necessarily immediately focused on what's next, who's next, and ... So this layoff may add some elements to his game. But that being said, if we see the last version, the one that fought Tony Ferguson and Jared Gordon, yeah, I don't think it's not gonna bode well for him against Bobby Green, in my opinion.
I like Bobby Green in this fight myself. I feel like Bobby Green is scrappy against anybody. And to your point, I don't think that Paddy has the power that people want to tout him for. So I feel like if he gets in there and that's his plan is to go in there and try to knock out Bobby Green will scrap with anybody. He's shown that doesn't matter who's in the cage with him. And I feel like Paddy's going to go out there with something to prove, and I think it could cost him against Bobby Green. But speaking of things costing people, man, I got to ask you, what are your thoughts on this whole thing with Tom Aspinall? Do you feel like if he wins, because in a lot of ways, man, I feel like he's got to win this fight dominantly or it doesn't do him any good. But at the same time, it's like Tom Aspinall's taking all the risk, but there's not even a guarantee if he wins this fight that he gets the John Jones fight. So what are your thoughts on Tom Aspinall and his trajectory with this fight?
I think it's what they had. I mean, the whole thing's silly. I mean, you fight the next man up. John Jones should fight Tom Aspinall. But on the flip side, I understand John not wanting to fight him. I always give this example where it's like, if someone came to your job and said, hey, we're going to pay you more money and we're going to cut back your hours, you'd take it. That's essentially what fighting Stipe is doing. He fights a bigger name that's going to be an easier challenge for him. And John can then, at the end of the day, say, I beat one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. He can't say that about Tom because he just won the title. So it's too much of a risk. There's not a, you're not going to get the same value when you look back on the career, even though every single fan, most fans look at that and go that Stipe is not the number one contender. It's Tom Aspinall. That's how they're going to spin it. That's why you'll notice in every interview now, people always ask us, why does Dana keep bringing up John being the pound for pound best? It's to sell the casual fans on the Stipe fight. That's my thinking. That's why he keeps, he brought it up out of nowhere. I forget. I think it was like a thing with Islam or something. And then he's like, oh yeah, John's the pound for pound best. It's because he's trying to sell us on this. But everyone who watches the sport knows that Tom Aspinall is the number one guy that should be fighting him. So that's why they're making the Blades fight. I'm happy for Curtis Blades. I think he deserves it. It's been a long road for him. He's had a lot of setbacks, but this is a great fight. I'm glad they're running it back because the first fight obviously ended in that injury. And I feel like I think this whole thing would be solved if they just would not make the Stipe John fight for the belt, and this was for the belt, and then no one can complain because it's like, okay, we'll just let John fight his last fight before retirement. It's Stipe, but he's not doing it because it's an ego thing, right?
I agree. And the thing that's crazy with the whole thing too is it pains me to say it because I've always been a Stipe guy. But like at this point, I don't blame Stipe at all for what he was doing. He waited out and got himself a title shot. Now, personally, I think all that time waiting is gonna cost him in the long run. And to your point, I mean, look, man,
if there's one thing we've learned about the fight game is sometimes it's not who's better, it's what time you can catch them. And I could totally understand if I got to choose between a young buck like Tom Aspinall, who can literally get you in all areas and's got all the strength and power and all that stuff, or I can fight another guy who, like you said, has the bigger name and how much the UFC has tried to promote the fact that they call him the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. I could see why you'd take that fight. For me, I mean, I don't think Curtis Blades is going to beat Aspinall in this one. I think Aspinall is going to come out here with a reason to want to put on a show. And I feel like in doing so, he's going to probably finish Curtis Blades, I'd say probably in like the third round. But I think for sure, I think that Tom Aspinall is using this as a showcase fight. Question then is, if I'm Tom Aspinall, though, I feel like you've all but got to sit down until John Jones comes back, no? Or at least what we know what he's going to do.
No, I think he fights the winner of Volkov and Gane. That rematch, I think it's just going to move on. John Jones, like again, if I'm wrong about this, I'll gladly go on my channel and say I was wrong all along. But I've been saying this for the last year and a half. John Jones is going to fight Stipe, and he's done. And I don't think Stipe will beat him. Even if Stipe does beat him, I still think John would come and fight Stipe one more time and then retire. He's not fighting Tom Aspinall. So I'm going to maintain that. My official pick for this fight, quickly, guys. Tom Aspinall, second round knockout. I love Curtis Blades. I've been interviewing him since he was an RFA. It's been cool to see him get this opportunity after all these years, but he has a tendency to lose to guys with punching power. Guys that he should beat, like Pavlovich and Derek Lewis, were fights he should have won. That was for me, the time when I'm like, I don't think he can win a championship if he's got this issue where he loses to guys that seem to be able to catch him. So I think Aspinall gets it done. I know people talk about the wrestling, but again, if it goes to the ground, Aspinall's got a great ground game as well. So I think no matter where the fight goes, Aspinall's going to have the advantage. I'm going to go Aspinall second round knockout. And I actually got to get out of here, guys. Yes, but before I get out of here, you guys are doing an awesome job. I love your show. It's so cool to see you guys get so many different opportunities. And you guys know I don't do a ton of podcasts, but I always do your show because I love you guys. You guys are awesome. So just wanted to mention that. And I got to get out of here. But thanks again for having me.
Much appreciated, brother. Like I said, check him out if you're not already doing so.
Yeah. All right, guys. Take care. Yes, knockouts in 3 counts. There's your promo right there.
You got it. Have a good night, brother.
Later, brother.
See you later, guys.
Yeah, man.
Shout out to James Lynch for coming through. If any of you guys who are watching, let us know what you think about some of these picks. I don't know, man. I feel like this is Aspinall's fight to lose, to be honest with you. Like,
It like you said, kind of in the beginning of your lead up to your pick, it is a bit of a redemption story for Aspinall because of the way the whole first fight with Blades played out. He was an undefeated heavyweight. He lost that record via injury. And now, not only that, now he's the interim champ. Realistically, we'll just call this the championship bout because like James was just saying, this realistically is the new echelon at heavyweights belt right now. This isn't the like true championship or whatever, but this is all the young up and coming potential true champions at heavyweight that at least would then have to deal with John Jones if he does end up sticking around. But I agree with what James Lynch was just saying in the fact of more than likely we're seeing John Jones one time and then he's gone. So maybe twice, maybe, but I don't think
Stipe he fights Aspinall, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I don't even think it's really twice. So that being said, I think this is for the belt, and at least if you don't want to consider it, you can call it the up next belt or whatever. But that being said, Tom Aspinall is so well rounded in so many aspects of the game, and especially for being at heavyweight, the way he's able to move his feet, the way he's able to land shots, set shots up on people, and like James was just saying, his ground game that's like his number one aspect that got him into training MMA in general was the fact that his father owns a jiu-jitsu gym. So just that whole package at heavyweight, we've been talking basically his whole career about how impressive he's looked. He looks like a potential future champion. Here he is. Now he's in that spot here. He beat Pavlovich pretty decisively. And I think it very well might be the same thing up against Blades this time.
I think Aspinall's that guy, dude. I think whether it goes through John Jones or not, I think Tom Aspinall is next up at heavyweight. That's my personal opinion on it. I think he gets the win over Curtis Blades as long as nothing out of the ordinary happens. But with that being said, and talking about moving up to heavyweight, your boy will be in the press conference for one Clarissa Shields as she gets ready to move up to heavyweight this weekend.
Heavyweight.
At Little Caesars Arena. We will be in the building. Corey, the last thing I want to talk about is, I mean, I totally respect what she's trying to do, trying to go conquer another weight class. I think that's dope. But
going for
I
that
feel like
Amanda Serrano type of, get all the belts.
Here's the thing, right? Like, I think it's dope that she's doing that. I think, anybody who's new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can go back and check out some of those chats that we had with Clarissa. But I mean, I feel like if she wins this fight, there's really not that much left for her to do at boxing. I mean, unless she fights Alicia Bumgardner, with Bumgardner as a weight class below where she was before, so I don't know that I see that fight. To be honest with you, I feel like the only real fight for her to make after this fight would be for her and Savannah Marshall to fight in PFL. And I just don't know how much you could really have left for her at in boxing.
Yeah, very, very clearly it seems to be going that direction, at least in PFL's eyes, because of the fact that they signed her. She's now had her first MMA fight as well. So I can definitely see that being the direction that they're trying to take that coming into next year. But that being said, I agree, man. And that very well might be why Clarissa Shields kind of started to chase that MMA itch in the beginning, is because she may have seen the writing on the wall as well. Like with what you're saying, is she's kind of beat all the potential contenders and stuff. And right now it seems like she isn't quite able to garner the same level of interest she was able to with some of the past matchups that she was able to find and stuff, because it seemed to be a lot more of a competitive matchup than what we're potentially seeing now.
I don't know that it's so much, I think, on the competitiveness of the matchup, but I think it comes down to a couple different things. And I mean, feel free to say what you want about it, but I think number one, the reason why the other fight sold better was it was the first world title fight there, number one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The first big return, too. That was a huge thing.
But more so than anything, I feel like there was a more intrigue to the last fight because, remember, originally she was supposed to fight Hannah Gabriels.
Mm-hmm.
And Hannah Gabriels, I mean, let's call it what it is. She's hot, too. So I feel like the fact that she was, and not that her other opponent wasn't, but I just feel like it was the combination of the fact that she's a pretty lady, but she was also the only one to ever drop Clarissa, right? So yeah. I feel like that had a lot to do with it too. I think once we got to the point where, she was fighting the other girl, I mean, yeah, everybody wanted to still see Clarissa fight, but I feel like some of the intrigue was the fact that Hannah had dropped her, right? So I feel like the thing with this is, I mean, while us as fight fans, I think it's dope that she's trying to go topple another mountain, and win a heavyweight title. But I don't think there's as much hype on it because, I mean, to be honest with you, I would go as far to maybe say is obviously women's heavyweight boxing doesn't get the same light as men's heavyweight boxing. So I don't think enough people know the weight class there for her to go run it out unless she's just going to win all the belts in that. I think she goes in there, wins the heavyweight title, and then heads back over to MMA because I just realistically don't think that there's a lot more fights for her in boxing. Now, I could be wrong, and if you watch this and have some other names of people that she should fight, please drop them in the comments. But just from what I've seen and covering the last fight, I feel like she probably wants to get this so she can say that she's conquered another weight division. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I feel like the move would be to go back to PFL.
Unfortunately for her, too, it seems like a lot of all the stars and stuff and all the potential stars that we've been seeing in boxing lately on the women's side have all been in the smaller weight classes below what she would be comfortable at fighting. And I completely understand not wanting to suck yourself out for the fights and stuff like that, especially with her level of experience and just, provenness in this game. But that being said, I completely agree with what you're saying, man. Most of the challenges have been conquered here. There isn't a a very clear contender that she needs to go against next. So, like you said, they already signed Savannah Marshall in PFL, so that really seems like the next move, honestly.
Yeah, man, I feel like that's the fight for her. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to covering the press conference and everything for Knockouts and 3 Counts and bodyslam.net. But yeah, man, I feel like that kind of covers the most of it. With that being said, like I said, make sure if you guys are at the Clarissa Shields fight, make sure you're checking us out. We won't be live this Thursday or Tuesday because tomorrow I'm going to go break some stuff and go watch Limp Bizkit, and then Thursday we'll be doing stuff with the Clarissa Shields fight. So, like I said, lots going on. Busy week. I'm doing the judging thing this week. So if you're down at the fights in Motor City, make sure you check them out. Shout out to our other sponsor, Mitten Muay Thai, which those fights are coming up real soon. So, like I said, lots coming
Shout
from.
out
Go ahead.
last week's guest too, Miranda Maverick, on that impressive win. And last
100%, and I won some money. What I tell you, I bet money on our guest. I won some money. Shout out to Miranda Maverick.
Even though she didn't get the finish, Asa, I haven't bought my ticket yet either. I'm going to need you to buy a ticket, drive your ass to Pine Knob. Maybe we can pull Corey's ass out the house because his little brother's going with me, but Corey's too scared. He's afraid they're going to break his bike.
Yeah, no, not at all. That's not at all what it is. I've expressed it to quite a few people, and my brother's he's more understanding, I guess. But the opening acts.
No, I totally get it. I mean, I'm being honest with you. I only
to see them or not, whether they're included in your experience or not. What they do is they set the tempo of the mood for the night. So the main band picked those opening acts for a reason, because they want that to be the feeling for that night. And those are like underground rap, and that just ain't my vibe. You know, what can I say?
All I'm saying is I just need to see Limp Bizkit one time in my category of going to concerts. That's why I'm saying it's worth it for me to go see them one time so that I can enjoy this shit. Like I said, we're all going down there. Fucking, it's going to be a good time. If you're at Pine Knob, make sure you check that out. And like I said, until next time and in the in-between time, make sure you hit that button. I'm looking forward to seeing what's up. Tell me what you thought of Cobra Kai. We'll see you guys soon.